What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the arena. It's your boy SEADUB here. About to get into a very deep topic today, guys. Today's topic is going to be about marijuana, THC, the devil's lettuce. But I'm here to tell you that shit is no cure for the human condition, guys. That's my play on words for it right there, the human condition. I think it's very popularized now in current culture. Smoking weed, getting high. Everybody really enjoys that stuff. Not everybody, no, everybody does not really enjoy that stuff, but it's really pushed to the younger generation. And I know in my generation, it was one of those things, probably more of like a rite of passage type thing, but it really went too far, and I'm here to get into some things about it. It's no cure for the human condition, guys. And I think a lot of people, they're in high stress situations, stressful jobs, life has an intense way of kicking us in the ass sometimes. And I think a lot of people want to smoke weed and stuff to relax and numb out from that, reduce the level of stress that they feel, but it's really just a temporary patch for that, guys. It's not real relief. A lot of people too, they like to get high to watch their favorite movie or listen to music or go someplace and do something, and getting high is part of it as well. But then the question I ask is, if getting high is such a big deal, do you enjoy the things that you're going to do, or do you really just enjoy getting high? And that's the same thing for people that try to get into a creative space and stuff with drugs or weed or whatever, you name it. In that zone or whatever a couple times, and then you're gonna need more and more to chase after it. But do you really have creativity because of the high, or do you have creativity because you're creative? For me, this is a really deep topic because I grew up around drugs heavily. I'd like to make another video one of these days soon that tells a little bit more about my backstory personally, but I'll just put it to you like this. My father was a drug kingpin, in my area. So I grew up around people talking in code, I knew what it was from a very young age. And I think one of my earliest experiences with weed was probably getting a secondhand or contact high as a kid. We went on a really long road trip one time, across my state. I think my dad, he probably brought, a couple packs of blunts, just rolled up full of weed. And, this is a long, long time ago. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, so people say a contact high is not real, but I think it probably affects young people differently, and I got hot boxed in the car, for a couple hours. And I remember, seeing things, the music sounded funny, everything was a little bit different. And that's probably one of my first and earliest, most formative experiences with that type of stuff. Now, one thing my dad always told me, though, was to never do drugs. He died probably when I was like 15. So I always kind of tried to stay true to that, in the high school years and stuff. People are experimenting, trying new things, how young guys and young teenagers do it. Part of my time in high school, I think it was my senior year, I used to have these really severe headaches. It was crazy. I went to the doctor to see about it and stuff. There was never really any legit cure or relief I could find for it. So one time I'm hanging out with my friends and stuff, and they're smoking some weed. I didn't smoke weed and stuff. I tried to, stay true to what I thought was important. And I've been having my headaches and stuff. One of my friends who's actually in prison now, he's been serving like a 10-year prison sentence because he's a dumbass. He told me, he said, "Look, man, I know you don't want to do this, but if your head hurts as bad as you say it hurts, smoke this weed and I bet it'll feel better." So you know what? I thought, there's not much to lose. I'm so tired of these headaches. So he had the joint lit up and stuff. I took it, smoked it, took a couple of puffs of it and stuff, inhaled it, and damn, that first time really getting high, there's nothing like it. We chilled out in my truck. This is a long time ago. I had a truck with subwoofers in it and stuff. And we sat there and we listened to the music, and you could feel it through your body. We got the munchies. We went and got some snacks and shit. Man, that was a hell of a time. I never really smoked much weed after that either, just here and there with friends. It would usually be like months apart. So every time was kind of like the first time all over again. Just getting super high, super messed up off of it. And, looking back on it, it was some fun times. I think those first couple of times and stuff, you never really get high like that again, especially once you become a regular everyday smoker and stuff, which leads me to, where I ended up at. It took probably about 2 years or so until I became, you know, an everyday smoker, every day getting high. You know, from the moment I woke up in the mornings, blazing throughout the middle of the day, bong rips, smoking joints, you know, whatever. I made my way into the medical marijuana industry in a neighboring state. You know, I actually had farms and stuff like that and investors, and I used a lot of my knowledge that I gained along the way as far as working in agriculture, biology knowledge, and, you know, I grew a shitload of weed. And once you get into the grower life, you know, you're gonna smoke more than anybody. You know, people talk about they smoke a lot of weed. They have no idea what the people that are growing it and have an unlimited supply, they smoke like you would never believe. Trust me, I've been there, and it probably led me to feeling worse than ever. You know, and that's the thing too. You know, I'm going to talk about this some more in here, is that the dose makes the poison, right? So, you know, probably smoking every once in a while or getting high every once in a while, edible every once in a while, is probably not the worst thing for you. Definitely not, you know, compared to other drugs and stuff that are out there. When it becomes something that you want to do all the time, you don't want to go without it, you don't want a couple of hours to go by without smoking, you don't want to eat without smoking, man, you are poisoning yourself. I promise you that. 1000%. And this isn't like, you know, your grandpa's weed or your parents' weed back in the day where it was, you know, not that strong as stuff. Nowadays, you know, there's 30% flour and 100% concentrates and stuff. So, you know, it's like taking shots of whiskey and drinking Everclear, you know, in terms of strength. And I don't think our bodies were designed to have that flowing through us 100% of the time at all. You know, when you look at the history of it, guys, what did they say about cigarettes back in the day? It was youthful, it would make you healthy, good for you, and now they know it's some of the worst shit out there for you, hands down. I think weed's gonna go through the same thing, and I think it's super important that you know, maybe some of the legislation is changing and stuff from a federal level to allow for proper medical testing and stuff like that, university level health studies, long-term studies, because as a Schedule I drug, they can't test any of that. You know, I think the testing and stuff is going to come out over time, and people are going to be like, man, why did I do this? And, you know, it left me in a point to where I was like, you know, why do I do this? So I knew to completely quit and get clean of that stuff, I had to walk away from being the grower. I had to walk away from doing that type of stuff, being around those types of people. So, you know, I pretty much talked with my investors. The business where I was at was pretty much all torn up anyways, because people were doing a lot of wrong stuff, black market stuff, which I never got into any of that because I've got some morals and stuff behind me. You know, we weren't making a whole lot of money off of it anymore anyways, and I said the best thing we can do is cut our losses, and they were okay with that. Not necessarily cut our losses, but knowing when to quit, right? Let's get into that video that I made a couple of days ago. So we do that, you know, and I go from smoking like a grower to cold turkey clean off of it, guys. People say that the weed withdrawals are no big deal and stuff. For me personally, it was huge, guys. It was some really shitty ways to feel. A lot of the time at night, you know, I'd wake up from really bad dreams and stuff, coming off that, you know, really getting back into the REM sleep and stuff. That would go on for months. You know, I definitely am one with mental health problems. I'm gonna shoot y'all the video about you know, being in the mental hospital here soon, guys, because that's part of my story that I'd love to tell. You know, the withdrawals off the marijuana was crazy for me. You know, I definitely suffer from mental health stuff. I always thought weed made my mental health better. That's bullshit. Weed is not making your mental health better. I had a shorter fuse than ever whenever I smoked a lot of weed, and I think probably one of the best things for my mental health, cleaning myself up off of that shit, guys. Look at the stuff that's coming out now about psychosis and stuff like that. You know, weed is not mental health, guys. It's not good for it. You know, another thing about coming clean and withdrawals and stuff and sobriety, guys, is that a lot of people relapse. You know, the first time when I first really got myself clean, I made it 6 months, you know, half a year, and those thoughts crept back into my head. I'm like, man, I miss getting high. I miss smoking out. I miss, you know, all that stupid shit that I used to do. So what I do, I went and linked up with one of the homies, still a homie, you know, but great guy, but you know, he loves smoking the weed and stuff. I'm hanging out with him, and I said, man, let me take one of those dabs, you know. We like smoking them dabs. And so I smoked that shit and got high and smoked on it for about 5 months. But you know, deep down in my soul, I knew it wasn't for me anymore, guys. So I had to go through that whole withdrawal process again. And this time it was worse than the first time. And I'll tell you what, if for nothing else, I would never ever smoke that shit again, just because I can't go through that withdrawal process again. I don't think my body can take that, and I'm not interested in taking myself through there like that. But you know, and studying sobriety and stuff like that, I understand that a lot of people that get sober, they do eventually relapse somewhere along the line, because your body, you know, thinks maybe it's missing something, your mind thinks it's missing something, but then you go out there and do that and get reminded, you know, that's not who I want to be anymore. And I had to make the decision that that's not who I want to be anymore. And now I'm working on my 3rd year of sobriety from smoking marijuana and stuff, guys. You know, it never really crosses my mind at all that that's something I want to do. And you know, I think I've definitely made it to the other side of it. And I think that smoking weed is bum activities now. You know what I'm saying? I don't even really hang or be around anybody that does that type of stuff, because there's nobody in society I look up to that does that shit. You know, we could talk about Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, whoever these superstars are and stuff that smoke weed and still make a lot of money and still stay productive. Guys, those are outliers. You are not those guys. You are not them. And I hate to break it to you. If you try to live like them and, you know, you're doing the everyday stuff, promise you, you're a bum. And people that don't do drugs, don't smoke weed and stuff like that, they're looking at you like a bum too. But you know, I've taken my trip over to sobriety now. I've helped some of my friends, you know, that smoke weed heavy, some other growers and stuff like that. I've encouraged them to take the clean path. And this is another thing I could say, you know, that I think is very important. This is a quote that I've been coming with lately. You know, us in the drug culture and stuff, we got a lot of friends, you know, they're close friends, great people. You know, we love these people. They're so cool. You know, we love to do drugs with these people, and that's what makes our friendships really cool. How many of these friends are cool enough to get clean with you and stay clean with you? Who's cool enough to do that? You know, that's one of my questions, guys. You know, and when you withdraw off this stuff, guys, you got to really make room and time to take care of your mental health, guys, and, you know, staying productive with tasks and stuff like that. Of course, you know, the gym will really help you with that. Staying in the gym, getting that cardio in, getting some weightlifting in. Because guys, where does the THC live? It lives in your fat cells, you know. So you can stop smoking it today, but you know, your body still has to digest all those THC metabolites that's stored up within your fat, you know. So in my opinion, it takes months to really get clean. It takes months to really get that shit out of your system. One of the best ways to help you get it out of your system is burning some of that fat off, you know, and tap into that runner's high, tap into those weightlifting endorphins, you know, because it's going to feel really good to get that release and burn that shit up out of your body, guys. You know, and I think it's an important thing. You know, people can try it. It's definitely I don't even know if it's a gateway drug, because that's the only thing I ever really did, guys. I've never even gotten drunk before. I've just always smoked weed. Just like with any drug, guys, that first time is pure bliss. You know, the first time you get high off whatever it is, it's going to be the most intense, because your brain has not experienced those chemicals and stuff before in its receptors, and you're gonna spend forever, you know, trying to chase that type of high again. You're gonna smoke more, you're gonna do more, you'll take more, whatever it is, and you're not gonna reach that point again, guys. You're chasing after something that doesn't exist anymore. Let's talk about the real deal medical usage, guys. I don't think people who smoke marijuana are wrong, or, you know, use medical marijuana. I mean, you know, medical marijuana is just a term. We know it's all the same thing, but there are legitimate medical conditions, you know, that do benefit from cannabis usage. And that's people with cancer, seizures, eating disorders. I don't look down on those people at all now, you know, and if that makes them feel better to do that type of stuff, yes, I'm 100% for it. I'm also not for saying, you know, here we are with medical marijuana and there's no real medical thing being treated. You know, we call it medical, but the truth is you just want to get high, and that's bullshit to me, you know, and that kind of goes back into the strength of things now. This stuff is way stronger than when it was recreational recreational back in like the Woodstock days, or people smoked it just to have fun back then. Even then, it probably wasn't good for you. I don't think smoking anything and breathing it in is good for you, but I don't think it was as hard on the body as it is now. And you know, from being in the grow industry, guys, I can tell you this for a fact. Some of the chemicals and stuff that's being used and put on these plants, you know, that you want to smoke and get high and eat the edible and all of that, guys, you do not know what you're putting into you. The testing protocols and stuff for medical marijuana, yeah, it's screening for certain things, but the medical marijuana industry turned into a race to the bottom, right? The producers in the industry that wanted to grow the highest quality cannabis and stuff, they got shit canned out of the industry because it costs money to grow good weed, guys. Good weed is not selling for $200, $300, $400 a pound, but there's people from overseas, they're coming, cartel gang members, triad, Asian gang members. Now, I'm not discriminating against any races or anything like that, but there's a lot of underworld culture and stuff that's getting into the manufacturing of these plants and stuff, guys. The testing protocols and stuff, if everybody was growing this stuff in good faith, it would work, guys. There's a lot of industrial strength herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, all sorts of stuff like that, guys, that are not being tested for, that are certainly being used on these crops, guys, and there is no telling what that shit is doing to your health. You know, under the term of medical, it's just created a new black market, guys. You know, in the states that are around me, they're trying to crack down on it hard, and I really think they should, because you know, some of these underworld types that have gotten into the production and stuff like that, they've kept honest people from making a living off of it, and I think that's kind of fucked up. With that said, you know, I'm really interested to see over the next couple of years and stuff what sort of testing is analyzed, what, you know, further medical tests do, long-term health testing, and even, you know, a further regulation of the market to figure out, you know, what's the actual effects on this, what it does to the body, what it does to the brain. I think a lot of us will figure out that we were probably smoking ourselves stupid over the past. And I think one thing is, once you sober up and stuff, you'll look back on how you treated people as a drug addict, as a stoner, whatever, and you'll realize that shit turns you into a real fucking dumbass, man. I think about some of the people in my life and how I've affected them because of my own choices to get high and to smoke out and, you know, to really dumb myself down. I've accomplished less because of it. There's no question about that. I've hurt good, honest people because of this stuff, guys. I'm not saying in a criminal way, but I'm saying I've hurt people that love me and cared about me. And one thing I'll make this the closing note on it, guys. If you've got people around you and they're addicted to drugs, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, pills, you name it, I know you want them to get clean. I know more than anything you would love for them to stop doing that shit. But until you want for yourself, until you want more, until you want better for yourself, you're not going to quit doing those drugs, and you damn sure can't convince anybody to stop doing them. So what I'm saying is, want more for yourself, want more for your future. Quit doing that shit, because you're worth more, guys. This has been The Arena with SEADUB. Hopefully this deep discussion reaches y'all. I'd love for this to reach the masses, guys. So if you know somebody that would benefit from hearing this story, you know, like this, share this, and hell, hit me in the comments if you want to share your story. Maybe we could discuss it, guys. This has been The Arena. If you found me on here, I love y'all, and peace.